idealistic hippies. The liberalists are those that believe, hey, it's power and security are all kind of cool, man. But progress and liberty are much more approachable. They're much more interesting. Besides, can't you argue that you can achieve power and security with progress and liberty? I mean, show me a first world democracy that's falling apart. Okay, maybe this one, but, whatever. Different story. But, what's the last, what's Norway's biggest problem? You all know what Norway's biggest problem is. Running out of garbage to recycle for renewable energy. Wow. Okay? What's New Zealand's biggest problem? More sheep than people. Okay? What's Finland's biggest problem? Not enough metal veins. I don't know. Okay, I've got high degrees of suicide, but that's probably because it's dark 8 out of 12 months of the year, and they've got better vodka than anybody else does. So no sun, lots of vodka. Yeah, they're pretty depressing. But damn it, their school system is fantastic. Okay? Liberalists also regard war as an injustice. Right? Remember, realists are basically the ones that are saying that war is just inevitable. Okay? We don't like it, we don't love it, it's just part of life. Deal with it. Liberalists are saying, no, you know what, we can actually try to minimize it. Almost to the point of making it obsolete. Now, making it obsolete. And look, have we eliminated war? Has war gone extinct? No. But has war gone extinct in various parts of the world? Yes. That much is certain. There are lots of places in the world today where war is just simply irrational. And I'm not talking about that gated community on the French-German border. Now, you can always look to the core of where the European Union began. Great, we got it. What's the likelihood of India and Pakistan going to war? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. What's the likelihood of Russia and China going to war? Not going to happen. Or China and Japan going to war? Not going to happen. It's not even nuclear weapons. It's just the idea. It's just not going to work. Never going to happen. Okay? Not going to happen at all. And that's because liberalists, whether you're Democratic or not, this is where the UN comes in rather nicely, if somewhat cliched. Liberalists adhere to what they refer to as universal laws. Right? There are universal laws on the rights of man, which sounds rather highfalutin if you read your John Locke or you read your stuff on Western philosophy. But that stuff is rather intoxicating. And whether you believe in it or not, whether you've read it or not, these things form the basis of not only the UN Charter, but the Geneva Convention, the Accord on Human Rights, how to treat prisoners of war, all sorts of things. There are certain standards by which states just should follow. They're not enforceable. No one is going to, really penalize you if you don't, but here's the best part about it. You don't need enforcement if you have reputation on the line. You don't need enforcement. All you need is bad publicity. That's all that you need. Here, I'll give you one really good example. Probably one of the most effective institutions in the world today. You wouldn't think that they are, because you can't imagine that they have that much global reach. But if there's any institution that I will say has really shrewd influence, it's Amnesty International. Amnesty International is awesome. Why? Because Amnesty International is to human rights and human rights in a country as a Better Business Bureau is to economics in a city. What Amnesty International does is it examines the role of corruption, the degree of human rights violations, environmental degradation, treatment of women, minorities, and children. And they publish it every year. Every year a country gets a rating. Now, does Amnesty International have an army? No. Do they have any type of enforcement? No. But what they do have is widespread objective reputation. Amnesty International is an equal opportunity offender. So they will berate life in North Korea. They will berate life in a country that ends with stab. But they will also talk about the declining political rights and censorship laws in the United States, in Great Britain as well. Right? They'll criticize every country. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's crap, but what they will do is provide objective coverage. And that is up then to international companies to decide. Amnesty International gives a bad rating for Romania, but a better rating for Poland in terms of corruption You're a global economic company, you want to open up a factory, you want to open up something in Eastern Europe. You got this review. Romania is worse off than Poland. Where are you going to put your factory? Where are you going to put your money? Where are you going to invest your stuff in? In Poland. Why? Because you want a return on your investment. It's pretty simple. Okay? So guess what, Romania? You want better investment next time? Clean up your economy. Rein in your organized crime. You'd be surprised. You would be surprised how quickly a lot of these countries believe in that stuff. Okay? Liberalists also adhere to a more international outlook. Right? In that case, the international outlook adheres to these principles of human rights, international law. They give institutions much more of a regard. They're not going to say that the UN, the EU, or any of these other things are better than states. They're not saying that. Now, you might get a few that, every year sings the Declaration of International Interdependence, whatever, who cares, okay? But what they do believe, as far as institutions are concerned, is that they do more than just get the stuff that you otherwise would not be able to get on your own. Institutions provide cooperation and mutual trust. There's a social capital that institutions provide. Greater cooperation and trust, as we talked about, reduces uncertainty and fear. With the reduction in uncertainty and fear, greater cooperation, greater harmony can take place. In that case, institutions end up taking on a life of their own, over 10, 15, whatever, how many years. We really can't see how the world would function today without the United Nations. At the absolute least, the United Nations is a forum for people to voice their grievances. If that's all, it has a major use. The European Union, it's annoying. But damn it, there's a good number of countries that still want to join. NATO, that's probably the most obvious one. NATO didn't so much disband after Warsaw Pact broke up, but almost every single Warsaw Pact country jumped ship and wanted to join NATO. Pretty much going from the dark side to the light side, or vice versa, whatever it is. There's only a few countries that are still not in NATO. And today, that's either for one of two reasons. One, they just haven't gotten their act together just yet because a country is preventing them from that taking place, like Macedonia. Or they don't want to go in because they'd rather be neutral, like Serbia. But other than that, there are more countries in NATO than there are in the European Union. So that tells you also something there. The pull towards joining these institutions, more than just simply personal gain, it's also mutual benefit. That's where relative gains comes in, right? Realism is absolute gains. Liberalism is relative gains. Everybody gains. Everybody gains through cooperation. Everybody benefits. States are one of a series of actors. These institutions are the other actors. They provide critical supplements. And whereas realism says, leave your ideology at home, liberalism says, wear that on a badge, yo. Especially if you ascribe to certain things like democratic peace theory, Wilsonian ideology, and the rights of man. Wear that ideology into battle. Spread the good word. Because as we know, things like commercial pacifism reduces uncertainty. Democratic peace theory all but eliminates war. Two ideologies, the ideology of capitalism and the ideology of democracy. And they get a bad rap today. But historically, if you put John Locke with Adam Smith together, or better yet, if you just put Adam Smith with Adam Smith together, okay? You don't even have to say that Adam Smith by himself. If you read Adam Smith beyond just simply chapter 1, Wealth of Nations, you read the rest of Adam Smith, you would find that Adam Smith's concept of free market capitalism necessitated some form of social democratic welfare. You cannot have it without it. Otherwise, you're going to have frontier capitalism at best, imperialism at worst. Okay? So don't even worry about John Locke or Thomas Jefferson. Just put Adam Smith, the economist, with Adam Smith, the philosopher, and you put them all together and they would work. Okay? Second case study, the Schuman Plan. This was the kernel upon which the European Union today rests. The Schuman Plan, named after French Foreign Minister Robert Schuman, who in the few years after the Second World War realized that not only would it benefit peace if the French and West German industrial economic sectors were to become inextricably linked, but through cooperation, because here's also one of the real dark elements about this. France was making money hand over fist when it was occupied by Hitler in the Second World War. France was making a good amount of money. As a matter of fact, there were a lot of countries of Eastern Europe that otherwise would have had crappy economies, but yeah, the Germans come in, they take you over, they kill all your minorities, but the economy is doing great. Okay? And then the worst thing happens. Hitler's defeated. Oh, we have to go back to a smaller economy. Okay, the French come up with this idea. You know, Nazism aside, you know, we work together here, we could actually make more. We could actually be more productive. And yeah, I mean, look, what's wrong with linking one's economies? It seals our fate together, and it also makes it increasingly irrational to go to war afterwards. So the Schuman plan specifically focuses on what we talked about last week and the week beforehand. French iron ore deposits meet German coal mines. The two go together and form steel. Steel that is jointly owned by French and German consortiums, but because it is a cooperative effort, it goes into creating over time two things that individual states could never be able to do. One, levels of productivity that rely on interdependence. And two, over time, this is also critically important, what initially starts out as an economic bonus to one's own national economies, within 5 to 10 years, goes from being a bonus to being seen as part of one's economic core. Today, French and German economies include this free trade area as part of their own national economies. And the whole idea seems so good that 5 other states were invited to take part in this. Italy, Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and, yes, even Great Britain. Great Britain was the only one that turned them down. The other countries joined in what became known as the European Coal and Steel Commission, the ECSC, European Coal and Steel Commission. That was the kernel that would eventually morph into the European Community and then the European Union. Not a surprise, ladies and gentlemen, that these 6 states today, especially if you look at regional Italian politics, northern Italy, more specifically northwestern Italy, not a surprise that this area, this geographic area, is one of the most economically developed regions of Europe. One of the highest standards of living, greatest degrees of democratic consolidation, and a place where borders are little more than novelties on the maps. Okay? The Schuman plan shows 2 things. 1, commercial pacifism can and will work if states are willing to play by the rules. Number 2, the Schuman plan also necessitates that these countries embrace some form of democracy, which they all do. Right? Even by 1950, right? Germany was trying hard, real hard, to come up with a better image for itself. And what better way of showing a better image than by working hard through economic development and working with the French, their former enemies. Today, well, you know, my goodness, look at how happy the couple is. I mean, it's just fantastic. Actually, it's a dating couple. Sarkozy is out. Merkel's now dating Hollande. But Merkel is the mainstay here, okay? I mean, the two are basically like, Bert and Ernie. Yet liberalism has its problems as well. You know, liberalism is often regarded as being way too idealistic. Almost to the point of being naive, you know? Hey man, give peace a chance, you know? Sure, all you need is just one nutball in the crowd, and suddenly, you know, look, let's be honest here. You know, you want to put up a sign that says gun-free school zone, you better make certain that that's enforced. So liberalism can be rather idealistic. hoping almost too much on human progress and ingenuity. And yes, this stuff will work if all participating members want to make it work. If there's one dissenter in the crowd, and that dissenter does have access to a lot of weapons, we suddenly default back to realism. Realism is just waiting around the corner, right? Realism is just waiting around the corner. Okay? Why does everybody have the same xylophone? It's a cool one, you know, but don't you have like 18 million different ringtones that you can download? I mean, I'm happy with that. Remember there was at one point where people wanted to have like their favorite song, but when they downloaded it, all it sounded like, you know? I guess that's why we go back to the xylophone one. So I mean, it's you know, it's at least it's pleasant to listen to. Okay. So wait, where was I? Now I forgot. What was I saying?
Too idealistic.
Too idealistic. That's right. Okay. Yes. Liberalism can sometimes be too idealistic, right? They sort of hope that everybody is going to be good and happy and work towards, you know, sort of the greater good. The other problem is that liberalism, for this to work, this is the other thing. In order for the Schuman plan to work around the rest of the world, it assumes that all participating members have something to foot the bill with, right? That you've got something to contribute, you know? Liberalism presupposes equal input in institutions. Look, if everybody comes with a different food that they prepared, it's what we would call a successful potluck dinner. But if you've been to these things before, you would probably know that there's at least one or two people that never cook because they just want to mooch off of other people's food. Or better yet, if it's not properly coordinated, you're going to get 5 people showing up with bean salad. Okay? And trust me, one person showing up with bean salad is one person too many. Alright? So it presupposes that everybody has something to contribute. Alright? And with that in mind, you know, yes, when you have 5, 6 relatively prosperous countries in Western Central Europe, okay, cool. But when you start bringing in poorer countries in Southern Europe, sorry Greece, sorry Spain, sorry Portugal. When you start bringing in Eastern Europe, sorry Slavdom, okay? Most of these people are going to look at the European Union or other institutions and just say, I can get a whole bunch of stuff out of it, and I don't have anything to contribute, but who cares? This is great, you know? Give me my check. Welfare time, woohoo, right? To which the more developed countries are going to say, well, why should I be the one putting more in? Look, I asked you this before. You all at one point was in a group project in school, high school, college, whatever it is. How many of you already can remember? You hate group projects because you know there's only going to be one person in the crowd. It's not going to do a damn thing out there. I'm going to do one thing, maybe 2 people in the crowd. Okay? If your grade's writing on it, you gotta do double time the work just so you can get a proper grade. Okay. Germany's been complaining about that for years. The French have been complaining about that for years. The Brits will do nothing but complain about that. That's why they want out of the European Union. Here's the other thing. Democratic peace theory. It's awesome. But as many of you properly identified, the road to full perpetual peace is often paved with multiple wars. You know? You can wait for everybody to become democratic, but what was the likelihood that Gaddafi was ever going to do anything other than act like a nutball? Or worse, not even Gaddafi, not even Mubarak, not even Hussein. But you know what? They're children. That's a big issue. The reason why people were like, oh, hell no, I'm not waiting for this any longer in the Middle East is because they thought, okay, Hosni Mubarak, longtime leader, dictator, duce, whatever you want to call it, of Egypt. The man was like in his 80s, 90s, whatever it was. Most Egyptians had made their peace with the idea. You know what? Let the old man just go. You know, just let him ride it out. When he dies, we'll entomb him as the next pharaoh, whatever, and we'll, you know, just move on to democracy. Until we realized that Mubarak's son was an even bigger dick than Mubarak. Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was basically the consummate bad guy in Chuck Norris movies. His 2 sons, Uday and Qusay, were crazy at it. Okay? Like, really, really, really fucked up in the head. And I'm not saying that to get your attention. If you read about them, they were fucked up in the head. Okay? Like, one of them had a PhD in political science, which makes him automatically a war criminal. Okay, done. Okay, gone. Okay? Gaddafi had kids. All right? And you could tell. These are people that are born into luxury given to them on the bones and blood of other people. So as far as they're concerned, they want to perpetuate that. Because the old men, people might look at them and say, okay, I could see they're sort of old-timers. They had to do what they had to do. Their kids are annoying. Their kids are almost always annoying. No one wants that. Why? Because they're usually in their 30s and 40s. They're going to be around for another 30, 40 years of power. Fuck that. Okay? So, leave it up to, somebody in America or Britain or whatever it is to be like, well, we have to fly out freedom to these people soon because we can't wait for them. We can't deal with another genocide. So, okay, democratic peace theory. No two democracies go to war. So if you're democratic, you're not going to go to war. Well, if you're not democratic yet, well, we're just going to have to speed that up now, won't we? Okay, yay. Let's give you some democracy. Now, sometimes it works. Rarely, it works. Germany, Japan, kind of, maybe, sort of. More often than not, here's the problem with democratic peace. Number one, you topple the governments and you give them free democracy, and you don't have anything like that. Life is even worse. It's chaotic. Take a look at Iraq today. Take a look at Libya. Egypt, for a brief period of time, was under the rule of the Islamic Brotherhood, which people are like, okay, democracy, that's just how it's supposed to go. Half of Egypt was like, oh, hell no. And Egypt is now under the rule of a former military colonel, Gamal al-Sisi, whom Egyptians fall into one of two categories. One, the guy is a tyrant. The other one is the guy is a god. Do not speak evil of Sisi. Okay? You've got Libya. It's just an absolute basket case. As a matter of fact, for those of you who are into the real-time strategy games, Libya is now just taken over by like the rebels. Okay? It's not even like an actual country at this point. So you topple a regime, you don't get democracy, you get chaos. At the absolute best, you prop up a pro-Western government. And here's also another dirty little secret about democratic peace theory. On paper, it sounds nice. In reality, most of the countries that do like to engage in regime change will oftentimes liken to make the power that they back as the pro-Western, as the pro-democratic. Let me give you this little quiz here. If you're in charge of a major country, like the United States, Great Britain, whatever it is, if you have to choose between backing a government that is pro-democratic or pro-Western, what are you going to do? Pro-democratic or pro-Western? What are you going to back? 9 times out of 10, pro-Western. If you're pro-Western and pro-democratic, well, that's just bonus points. 9 times out of 10, that don't happen. The pro-Western governments, okay, let's take a look at the pro-Western governments. You have the House of Saud, not pro-democratic by any stretch of the imagination. You have, what's his nuts? Poroshenko in Ukraine. Oh, Joe Biden and John McCain have unrequited man crushes on this guy. Poroshenko is even more corrupt than Vladimir Putin. That's saying a lot. Okay? Any of the pro-Western coalition people that take part in some type of kleptocratic, tin pot, quasi-dictatorship in the Caucasus, like Mikhail Saakashvili, or the Balkans, like Milo Djukanovic, yeah, they adhere to the principles of democracy, but in name only. In many cases, everybody knows these people are thieves. They are part of organized criminal networks. They're grotesquely corrupt, and there's no such thing as greater rights or civil liberties. Okay, so let's just cut the crap. All right. So in more cases than one, democratic peace theory gives countries with a lot of weapons the green light, the right of way, the ideological need to go to war, in the name of freedom, whatever the hell that means. In the name of liberty, whatever the hell that means. Okay? But all you got to do is just put something on TV. We've mobilized against the Suckastani forces, or whatever it is. Okay? I don't even know where the hell it is. All right? And we're giving the Suckastanis freedom. Yay! Where is that? It's in the People's Republic of Suckastan. Where is that? Over there. Some Central Asian, Borat country. Oh, well, that's just false. Go American. All right? That's it. And we never really ask what happens afterwards, right? Gaddafi's out. No one really looks at what's happening in Libya. Libya is a basket case. Okay? We're under this impression that we're backing the Free Syrian Army in Syria. They're the moderates. There's like 50 of these people. We've trained 50 soldiers. That's it. Okay? You've got Assad's forces on one side. You've got ISIS on the other. But yet we've got this little itty-bitty group of people here that allegedly are our allies because they're taking our money. I don't buy it for a second that they're pro-democratic. Some of them may believe in the cause, but they're few and far between. Okay? So democratic peace theory is probably one of the most, ironically, the most belligerent foreign policy out there. And the final thing that makes liberalism somewhat of a problem, and this is something that we're going to talk about more on Wednesday, but liberalism can often be masked within the framework of realism. You can have the two work rather well together. The outer candy-coating shell of defending human rights, of going up against tyranny in the world, of spreading liberty, all of those little cliched statements. Look, let's be honest. Realism's biggest pet peeve about ideology is if you're going to give a damn about one part of the world, you're going to have to give a damn about every other part. Well, reality is like, well, yeah, that's just how it is. I'm sorry. That's just how it is. Selective diplomacy does work. There are countries that this country does give a damn about. And there are others, they don't. The United States wanted to bring freedom to whatever, in Syria, in Libya, in Iraq, and, if need be, Iran. Notice how Arab Spring didn't even touch the Gulf states. Notice how we never even called for democratic reforms in Saudi Arabia. The closest country that was hit with Arab Spring was Yemen. And after being hit with Arab Spring, they're being hit with Saudi bombs and Saudi planes, which have the blessing from Washington. Because, well, the Saudis must be protected. Why? Well, do you want to pay $8 a gallon for gas? I don't. So, there you go. Keep one of the most tyrannical countries in power for the time being. Why? Because we're BFF with them. Okay, that's just reality. That's reality. It's neither good nor bad, that's just reality. Okay? We go to bed with a lot of tyrants in the world. We've done so in the past, we're going to do so in the present. We're not the only country that does this. Okay? But what it does show, especially if you use democratic peace theory, you can certainly apply it within the context of national interests and national security. You want to fight the war on terror? Cool. Got you. You want to go and invade Afghanistan? Go right ahead. Good luck trying to conquer it, because most people have tried. Almost everyone, except Alexander the Great, has failed. But go ahead. Why are we going into Iraq? Oh, Saddam's a bad guy, and he's killing his people. Okay, so are dozens and dozens of other countries. That sucks. Okay? But we're going to give democracy to the Iraqis. Okay, that's great. George W. Bush actually had this one fantastic moment. He doesn't have a lot of them, but he had this one. I'll give him this one. It's towards the end of his presidency. And something like this, there was this after Iraq, this was whatever, and as a reporter, there's basically saying something to the effect of, aren't you somehow concerned with the level of violence that's happened in Iraq since the invasion? And George W. Bush, whom I will admit, on a personal level, is probably a fantastic guy. There's no question about that. Would I have a beer with him? Absolutely. Would I go to a barbecue with him? Absolutely. The man would not bring bean salad to the barbecue. Okay? Was he the most shrewd president? Yeah. But he leans into the microphone. It's one of the few times I'll give him this. And he says, giving freedom to a country is hard work. You don't seem to appreciate that to the reporter. Don't you believe that the Iraqi people should have democracy? Don't you believe the Iraqi people should have freedom? Something like that. The guy had nothing to say. Oh my God, well, of course. Well, then that's what we're doing. Yeah, okay. You kind of are, sort of, maybe, but why there? Why not elsewhere? Why haven't you been egging on Turkey to deal with its minorities in ways other than, killing them? Okay? You complain about Russia being grotesquely corrupt, yet you give a gentleman's pass to Ukraine. You want to stop the flow of drugs coming out of Central Asia, yet you don't set fire to the poppy fields of Afghanistan. More often, you actually are in cahoots with a number of drug traffickers in the Balkans that take this stuff from Turkey through the Balkans into the rest of Europe. Again, that's reality. That's reality. And if that's the case, liberalism and realism can work a lot together. Why? Because it's strategic for us to give a damn about that part of the world, and the other parts, maybe not so much.